What's up, MotoBrewskis, and what's up in this video is a whole bunch of useful stuff that you can use in your adventure rides. And this is all things that I've learned doing multi-day adventure rides. More specifically, this was a 2-day, 3-day ride from Colorado all the way through to New Mexico and back, between 600 and 700 miles. I don't even know, and I'll get into that in a moment. So stick around. Let's get into this video right now. So the first point I want to make is this, is that the bikes really don't matter. Like, everyone's all wrapped up in, do I ride a KTM 890 Adventure R? What about a KTM 500? Is a dual sport better for me? Is a midweight Touareg 660 adventure bike the right one? And so there's lots of debate. And at the end of the day, the point is that everybody has their preferred machine. For instance, Stevie G, who was riding with us, was riding a 1988 BMW GS 100, so 1,000 cc's. And I definitely had my doubts about, that bike being able to, let's just say, compete, right? Or to be comparable to the more modern adventure bikes like Robbie was riding with the 890, my 2023 KTM 500 with all the bells and whistles on it. And so each rider has their own ride, and it really doesn't matter. As long as you are on the ride and on a machine that you like. Bradley, for instance, was riding an AJP 650 as an example. We were all riding different bikes. Pat was on a KTM 790 Adventure, and all the bikes held up incredibly well on the technical stuff, and even on these long distance off-road rides. And so at the end of the day, pick a machine, pick something that you love, that you feel comfortable riding on, and that is the end of it. We need to stop talking about, which is the best machine for this, that, and blah, blah. At the end of the day, it comes down to rider skill and rider preferences. And so at the end of the day, that's really what matters. Now, the next point is this. Some places you will only see once. When you're doing these multi-day adventure rides, you're not likely to go to this exact same place twice. And so take in the sights. It's so important just to let the moment burn into memory and not just your GoPro. Like you guys know, I record most of my stuff. And GoPro is fine, YouTube's fine, or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really about, experiencing these things that you're only going to see once. And this is what makes adventure riding so appealing and so valuable, in my opinion.
Pat, what's this place called?
Bishop's Castle.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Just some guy, man, decided to build a castle. It's big. It's pretty interesting because, the county was trying to shut him down for, and this is, decades ago. Big old fight, continuous court battles.
Wow. Really?
But he stuck it out, man.
Now, the next point is this. Ride with the slowest rider in the group, or the lowest common denominator. There was a rider with us who had only ridden his bike 5 times. He wasn't very confident on the rough stuff, on the technical stuff especially. And so it can be sometimes frustrating to have to wait for a slower rider and so on. But at the end of the day, this isn't a motocross event. You're not trying to get from A to B as fast as possible. This is ultimately about survival, and it's about a brotherhood first and foremost. If one of the boys gets into trouble, you're going to have your brothers there, your other riders there to help you out, lift the bike up, help you out with whatever you need. And at the end of the day, you do find some riders that just want to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's not really responsible to do that if you're riding with a slower or more inexperienced rider. So always ride with the lowest common denominator in mind and look after them wherever you can. Now, the next point is this. Don't ride up someone's ass going up a hill. So this was actually on me. Pat and I were going up an incline. It wasn't in fact, it was quite steep and quite rocky. And I thought I'd given Pat enough space ahead of me to head up this incline. And things go wrong, right? So Pat's hit this rock, lost momentum, and then I suddenly, had no more space to maneuver. And so I didn't allow enough space for my own riding skill to be able to move around him. And so eventually what happened was I actually rode into Pat in his rear wheel at least. And that's what, caused him and myself to fall over. And the worst part about it was that as Pat fell over, he actually broke his finger. And we didn't realize it at the time, that it was a nasty one. It was a nasty one. I'm not saying that, it could have been avoided if I'd given more space. People fall and break fingers all the time. But it did weigh on me. It did make me think, well, maybe I should have left a bit more space for him to do what he needed to do, which was to fall over at that point in time. And so don't, tailgate, quote unquote. Always, again, optimize for the worst scenario possible. If the rider in front of you is going to fall over, do you have enough space to maneuver out of the way?
I think...
oh man, I smashed my finger.
You're right.
And I know on the inclines and the technical stuff, it can get quite tight and it makes things difficult to make those sorts of calls quite quickly. But I do believe that if I'd given him more space, or myself more space, more importantly, I would have been able to actually ride around Pat, gone up the hill successfully, and then, being able to come down and help him with his situation, not, us with both of our bikes being on their sides. And so as a consequence of this, Pat said, does somebody have a medical aid kit? And of the 5 riders there, I was the only one with a medical aid kit. And so that thing actually became quite valuable. There's no emergency rooms, there's no urgent care, there's no hospitals in a nearby facility. And so I was quite surprised that I was the only one with medical kits. And thank God I actually took it, because it really did, help us keep Pat's situation under control, keep the wound clean and that kind of stuff. Obviously, it didn't help with the pain necessarily. Nothing some whiskey couldn't take care of. But nonetheless, how is it that I was the only one with a medical aid kit? And if I didn't have one, that situation could have been a lot worse than it was in the end. Now, the next point is this, things will break. You're riding off road. I was on obviously this machine. I've got the Raid Tower here, and I had my Garmin XT2 attached to the Raid Tower. And somewhere along the line, for some weird reason, the mount actually failed. So as I was riding, the mount started wobbling. I'm like, what is this knocking sound? And I looked down at the tower, and my XT2 is just flapping around, and so I had to make the call. I was like, well, I'm going to have to remove this thing. And at the end of the day, it sucked. And the reason why it sucked was because for the rest of the ride, I was completely helpless from a navigation perspective. On the second day, all I wanted to know was where we were going. I wanted to track record or record the routes where we were going so we could ride them potentially in the future. And I couldn't do anything like that. In fact, even on the second day, we did this massive tarmac, section. It was about 300 miles on tarmac. Wasn't what we wanted to do, but the weather wasn't playing ball. We had a relatively inexperienced rider there, so we didn't want to take any chances on the technical trail. So we just stuck to the road. And so eventually we wound up in a town called Salida, and no place to stay, starving, hungry, miserable, no sleep from camping, and that kind of thing. And all I actually wanted to do was go home. And I said to the boys, I'm like, look, maybe we should just call it and try and get back to the car, and it'll be a 1 a.m. sort of finish, but at least it'll be done. And they were like, well, maybe we should camp. And I'm like, well, maybe I should just do my own thing. And then I realized I didn't have any navigation anymore. And so it just really wasn't a safe call to make to, just try and navigate with your phone in your pocket. I didn't have the mounts. Basically, when you lose your navigation, it's like losing your eyes. And when that happens, you become completely reliable on the other riders with you. And so you should always have a plan B. I should have had mounts for my phone as an example on the bike. So in case your primary navigation tool or system fails, that you have a second one. All right, now camping. So camping is quite, it's not for everybody. Not everybody likes doing multi-day camping experiences or rides. And so your equipment camping really does matter. So what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing that I hate about my current tent is that it has these really short silver, pins. So, like when we were in Wyoming, it was raining for 3 days. Again, camping here in Colorado, like I've never found ground that's soft. So when you take a stone and you're hitting the pins into the ground to secure your tent, these thin pins, they just bend. And that, it really does suck because you can't secure your tent if it's windy. We all know, trying to sleep well during a windy camping evening is not, it's not an easy thing to do. And so the tip here is to get the solid spikes for your tent and don't use the thin stuff, the thin pins, because they just bend. And ultimately it becomes frustrating and you're trying to rebend it straight and whatever, and it just sucks. Equally, air mattresses matter. When I was in Wyoming, the air mattress actually went flat. And so I wound up sleeping on a very wet, muddy, lake ground floor. And let me tell you, that does suck, especially when it's cold. And so use better products, like really understand the products and invest in them. At the end of the day, cheap air mattresses will go flat, cheap pins will bend like wet spaghetti. And so upgrade. You're doing these multi-day rides to have a good time. And so little things all add up to a great experience. Now, the next point is this: campfire stories really beat Instagram highlights. Tell their stories, relive them, because that's really where the ride sinks in. It's where friendships get made.
I remember when I was younger, some people had the greenest teeth and the thickest slime on them.
You remember that?
I don't.
What are you talking about? Are you living in the fucking
Well, it's the truth. I don't see it anymore. I see people brush their teeth more now because these things didn't exist back then. That's the reason they had those things.
Shit,
What have I been doing all these years? I'm glad I got the slime out tonight. You ever wonder where they're at today?
They don't have real teeth anymore.
You mean the people? Yeah, the people they're probably right here. They just brush their teeth. When I was in high school, man, there's some people with terrible teeth. Like, it could have been me, for all I know. I know it.
We had such incredible, campsites. We were at the Rio Grande River Gorge in New Mexico, just completely awesome. And then on the second night, we were camping north of Salida in Colorado, and it was the most beautiful view and certainly campsite that I've ever slept in my life.
So our second camp spot. Day from hell today.
We pissed everybody off and they left. These two.
Major drama.
Only says we.
Yeah. But check where we are.
Matt pissed everybody off.
Yeah.
Raining all day. Anyway. Character building is a day.
Okay, so the next tip is food. So there's obviously dry food that you can take and you can boil it, but at the end of the day, it's dry food. It's good. Let's just say it's a staple, but it's not great, right? And so one of the things that I tested out this time is to actually go and buy burritos from the local supermarket, King Super, Safeway, whatever, and then wrap it in tin foil. I took 3 for breakfast, 3 for sort of lunch and dinner, and it was the best thing. They're quick to heat up. And they taste great. And so what I found really valuable was actually in the morning, right? So when your coals go cold, how do you warm up a breakfast? Well, this is how you do it.
So I'm eating breakfast, which is warm, on a morning of day 2. Top tip: get a burrito, wrap it in foil, and in the evening you just chuck it in the fire. Or the next morning, the coals will be cold, obviously, but the rocks are still hot. So you just shove the burrito between a couple of rocks, 10 minutes, and there you go. living the dream. Living the dream.
Oh man, we're in no hurry, buddies.
See down.
9:30.
Now, the next point is this. The journey is the destination. On our second day, we were riding literally in the rain most of the day. Hail happened at some point. It was quite ridiculous because in the morning it was so hot, took the sleeves off my jacket, and then 30 minutes later, we were sitting in a hailstorm. And then, of course, 300 miles of tarmac, more wind, more rain, can really, put you in the hurt locker.
That might be a tad close to the hurt locker.
And so I was just, focusing completely on the destination, like where are we going to stay, when are we going to eat, where are we going to get water from, how are we going to get, fire going in the rain. And I was just focusing on all the wrong things when all I should have actually been doing was just been sitting there on the bike and recognizing, okay, fine, suffering is just part of the thing and everything's going to work out. And so just being on the bike is the whole thing. It's not about like what campsite you're going to stay at and what you're going to eat that night. Yes, it's nice to know, but it's not essential. Like you're adventure riding. So enjoy the adventure. And now the next point is this. Friendships are forged in dust and trust. Stevie G, or Stephen Green, he actually went viral for riding his motorbike for the first time ever in Canada. Was some very remote place, and he was riding across a bridge, and his bike actually fell through the train tracks over a bridge.
2.5 foot long tie on the back. But I see a lot of shit around here that could work. There's another bridge. Bridge 11. Yeah. Any damage? Oh shit. Okay.
Looks pretty still.
Oh! Hang on! Fucking shit. Hang on, Steve. I'm good. Except for the bike.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
Holy shit. Something broke. I fell through and it broke.
Yeah, the railroad tie fell off.
Holy moly.
Oh boy, we might lose your bike, man. I don't know.
Well, we get it out, but I don't want it to fall down there. Here's what you got to do.
And the whole thing went viral. So Stevie's like a complete adventurer. And I've never met anyone that knows more about the trails and the mountains and the routes and the campsites in Colorado than Stevie G. And let me tell you, when you're sitting on your bike and you're in the hurt locker and you don't know what's up and you don't know where to go and, you don't have a leader and there's decision fatigue and, things just get nasty and you have those days sometimes. But to have Stephen there to really give us, very concrete advice, knows the area very well, and even like campsites, like where to go, and he's been there like 50 times, and so that becomes incredibly valuable when you think about friendships, because friendships are forged in dust and trust.
That's the beginning of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, right directly behind you. They're like 100 miles long, go all the way to Santa Fe. Just start right there. You can drive. There's a single track up that one over there. That's Antora. It's called the Skinny Trail. The far left. That's Ouray and Chipeta and Chabonneau, and those are the collegiates. And over there, you can just make out those chalk cliffs that collapse that I was telling you about. Underneath, I think it's Princeton. You see them?
Yeah.
The white shit on the bottom. That stuff is always collapsing.
Super
Just
pretty.
north of there is Independence Pass.
Looks like there's a trail down there too.
Where it probably is, but it's private probably. They used to do a lot of mining here. Down below, there's some really big mines.
Okay, one last tip, and this was a near-death experience that I actually had. Again, day 2, asphalt, driving, or riding rather, and the storms were coming in across the mountain range, and you could see it. And we were on dual lane highway, and the storms come in, and all of a sudden, this gust of wind literally just blew across the road, and it blew myself, Robbie, and Stephen literally from like the center lane on the right hand side. Almost, I was the worst because I had the lightest bike, but I was pushed, or blown rather, into the oncoming traffic. And I'll be honest with you, like I was scared shitless. I thought, like, how am I going to get, this bike back? And thankfully the wind stopped blowing and I was able to actually move the KTM 500 back into the right-hand lane. And so the tip on that one is, again, expect the worst. So it's kind of like an act of God or whatever, but ride on the right-hand side of the right lane. If you're in America, if you're in other countries, South Africa, UK, Australia as an example, ride on the left-hand side of the left lane. So that in the event that there is a gust of wind, you're not going to get blown into oncoming traffic. And so that was a pretty gnarly experience. Having said all of that, it was the best adventure riding experience of my very short adventure biking career to date, just because of all the uncertainty, all the unpredictability, all the things going wrong, the acts of God, the wind shears, not knowing where to camp. And at the end of all of that uncertainty, the certainty of knowing that you're going to be okay. And at the end of it all, that you're going to have great friendships, you're going to have great memories and great experiences that will always remind you of why it matters so much to be in this community of adventure bike riders. So there you go, guys. That concludes this video. What have you learned doing multi-day adventure bike rides? Leave all your tips and suggestions below this video. My name is Matt, signing out, and I'll see you again soon.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and most importantly, share it with your favorite MotoBrewski.